Hello you beautiful people and welcome to this entry of my indie games developer log. This week I started with what could be considered an actual first level. Not everything is done yet, but we're getting there. So let's have a look at what is new. The first thing I did was model some grass in Blender to put in the levels. I made one blade with a bit of vertex paint to kind of fake some shadows or ambient occlusion, and added noise modifier to make them a little wavy. Then I just copied and pasted a bunch to build a small grass group. Now I went over to Unreal to give them a material. I just multiplied a color with the mesh's vertex color to get that gradient. And to my surprise, when it comes to animating grass from wind, Unreal Engine has got your back with a ready-to-use simple grass wind node in the material editor. I put the parameters this node requires to set the wind intensity, weight and speed in the material parameter collection, so that in case I ever want to use wind on other things too, like bushes or whatever, they all have the same settings applied. I noticed the grass looked a little off at this point, but that was easily fixed by duplicating the grass mesh in Blender and flipping the normals so that it becomes a two-sided mesh instead of using a two-sided material. But I wasn't done yet, oh no. I wanted the grass to be pushed away by the player. So I added a few more nodes to the material to detect proximity to other objects in the scene and displaced the vertices away from that. And this is what it looks like. Geometry node bridge update. The UV Unwrap and PECUV Islands nodes were listed in Blender 3.3 release nodes, and version 3.3 is planned to be released on September 7th. I mean, I could use an alpha version to see if it works, but I'm just gonna wait for a stable release. The next thing I did was improving the camera system. Before, it just had a fixed look on the player and could only be changed by manually controlling the cam with the mouse or the right stick on the controller. I made it so that it automatically follows the ball's velocity and added a button to reset the camera quickly. But if you change the camera manually now, it stays that way until you come to a halt or press the reset camera button. Now, some of you have suggested this, and rightfully so. It is to add squash and stretch to the ball to improve the look and feel. This wasn't as simple as it first might seem. I can't just scale the ball object because it would just look all wrong when rolling around. But I found the solution. Making the transformation in the material and have it be handled in world space. I can then set the material parameters whenever I like, so I use timelines in my ball blueprint to animate it and edit it to pretty much all there is at this point. Jump, stretch, hitting a surface, squash, cannons and bounce pads, stretch. After this, I started modeling what could become an actual first level. It is supposed to be very simple, almost a tutorial to get new players accustomed to the controls. So the first thing a player encounters are a bunch of platforms in a hole you have to jump over. Nothing too harsh to punish the player if he fails, just roll back up and try again. It's meant to be a very safe environment, to learn the movement and jumping. This is not gonna be one of those uber hard indie Kaizo games, but of course it will have to become more difficult in later levels or it would just be boring. It was at this moment where I saw the hole with the platforms that a thought hit me. Should I fill this with water? Oh boy. And so it began. Well, so first I enabled Unreal's own water plugin to see where it would get me. After an editor restart, it needed to prepare just a handful of shaders. But when this was done, I tried placing some water surfaces. So it looked alright. I just reduced the wave strength since it's basically just a small pool and not a big lake or ocean. With that done, I started working on the physics implementation, since right now it's just a wavy plane for the looks. It took me a few hours with blueprints, coding and recompiling to almost get there. But the biggest problem was still lying ahead. I want the water to have a physics material so I can detect that and apply linear and angular drag accordingly and play splashy water sounds when moving around in water. But this was where I hit a wall with Unreal's water system. I applied the water physics material to everything to each and every single slot the water system components had for a physics material, on meshes and on materials. But nope, water was always detected with the default physics material. I guess it must generate something somewhere that automatically only has the default physics material. And that would mean swimming through water would sound like rolling on solid ground, and that is not acceptable. Wow, so what am I gonna do now? First I looked up 3 alternative solutions, and what I found looked promising. But it was developed for Unreal Engine 4 and was completely broken in UE5. And just in this very moment, a new video popped up in my YouTube feed. I picked up Fluid Ninja VFX tools in the past, and it's currently free on the Unreal Marketplace, but now it seems that Fluid Ninja Live just released an update with full UE5 compatibility. It must have been a sign with this timing, so should I? Well, a few hours later and a hole in my pocket, everything was working perfectly. Sounds, physics, and it even looks nicer than the other solutions. I just hope I'm sometime gonna make this back. And just now, as I'm editing this video, I received an email from Patreon. Wouldn't you believe that? I actually got my first Patreon supporter, Yaya Dunboos. A big thank you to you, and you just don't know how much it helps. It's really appreciated. I don't really advertise my Patreon very much because I don't have a lot to offer at this point, and I don't think a special Discord server makes sense yet. Maybe I could upload playable demos at some point, but don't take that as a promise. But if you want to support me and this project directly, you can do this via Patreon, or I also have some merch available. Links for both are in the video description. And back to the video. As the last thing for this week, I wanted to finish what could be the actual first levels model. I got a bit sidetracked with the water, but now it was back to modeling. So I cleaned up the topology of what I had a bit, and I wanted to put the goal on an elevated level next to the starting location. Then I connected those, what would you call them, islands with a bridge from Blender's loop tools, and finished cleaning up the walls. Then I decorated the level in Unreal, placed some fences, some flowers and some grass. I also put the goal inside a small hill on the side behind the gate to make the players figure out the button, so that they can immediately recognize it in later and more complex levels and hopefully know directly what to do. There are a few more things I would like to add here, like simple enemies or collectibles. But this week's time is already up, and it will have to wait until next week. If you don't want to miss that, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And again, special thanks to my very first patron, Yaya. And I hope to see you all again next week. Bye!
you